We cannot talk about ancient Rome without addressing the finds that we see at Pompeii and the whole issue of Mount Vesuvius. So August 24th, 79 BCE, or 79 CE, the early Roman Empire, Mount Vesuvius erupts. So we're kind of at that transitional period between the empire and the republic. And what we see is a number of contemporary accounts, including ones where, for example, I believe it's Pliny the Elder is looking across, writing about it, participates in the rescue. So we know that this happened. We know what happened at the time. There's brilliant information out there if you want to get into what does the experience of a volcanic eruption in the ancient world look like. In terms of a timeline of events, it starts off as a normal day. Sometime mid-morning, we see this eruption start to take place. And as we move into, and by the way, when it starts taking place, people start evacuating immediately. In fact, most people will get out of Pompeii. As the day progresses, the sky grows dark. They have these flaming stones, these hot rocks, falling into town. Of course, they're again leaving town. By that night, we see a series of pyroclastic flows that will start running across the city, really into the early morning hours. That starts, and by midday the next day, those pyroclastic flows have buried much of Pompeii. And these pyroclastic flows are pretty nasty things. So you have this massive column that erupts, and then you have a collapse of the column, or a vent. A couple of different things can happen. You get what's called a pyroclastic flow. Hot ash, mud, water, etc., all coming down the mountain. And this is coming down the mountain at incredibly high temperatures and incredibly high speeds. Where's the water coming from? It's coming from underground springs, groundwater, and it's part of the eruption as well. So we run into a lot of issues. And this is very bad for them, but good for us. By the way, there's another famous town, Herculaneum, which was closer to the mountain. It's about 5 kilometers away. Pompeii is a little bit further. And Herculaneum gets buried by hotter pyroclastic flows, or lahars, hot mud and debris, and eventually will be buried by lava as well. So this is bad for them, but good for us. Bad for that guy. So when we look at Pompeii, what's going to happen is these people, the people that don't make it out, and we're measuring this in the hundreds. And when you consider that Pompeii had a population at the time of probably 20,000, give or take, that's not too many people. The people at Pompeii are going to be buried in ash. They're going to suffocate. It's going to be a little bit slower death. And basically the ash is hot enough that it is burning their lungs and they're dying of suffocation, not from the amount of ash, but from the heat of the air that they're breathing. It's just damaging the lungs. They can no longer function. And there you go. At Herculaneum, when we find the boat houses near the harbor, we find a lot of people that really sheltered there. And because that ash, that pyroclastic flow is much hotter because they're closer to the volcano, what happens is it's around 5,000 degrees, I think. Don't quote me on that. And basically when they get hit by it, it's so much hotter that it's not suffocation that kills them, but literally their brain boils, their head pops, and it would be pretty instantaneous. Whereas at Pompeii, the body sort of cooks afterwards, and that's why we get some of the poses that we get. But it does leave ruins of a Roman city that are intact. We don't start really digging in Pompeii in any large effort until the 16th or 17th centuries. There are some excavations earlier. They tend to be much smaller. So this gives us a view of what Roman life was like. Now, I'd love to say this is regular Roman life, but Pompeii is kind of like Lake Geneva. It is a city that is based on a tourist trade, really wealthy tourists moving there from the city of Rome every summer. So we tend to see an upper class area, but that means we see more art, etc. So I'm just letting you know because this is not the way every Roman would have lived. In terms of the bodies at Pompeii, and we do find a number of them, what you're actually finding are voids. When they were starting to excavate, they would find these openings in the ash, and they were wondering what the heck they are. And digging down, you can't tell what the shape is. So they decided at some point to plunge an iron rod into one of these, or where they thought one might be, and fill it with plaster. And those are the bodies that we typically see today.